Final Fantasy. The name itself conjures images of JRPG grandeur and success. With Final Fantasy XV having been dated for release in September on PS4 and Xbox One, we take a look at the top Final Fantasy titles you should be playing while you wait. Final Fantasy VII. Final Fantasy VII isn't the best Final Fantasy of all time, but it is responsible for taking the series to heights of mega popularity in the West after debuting on the PlayStation 1 in 1997. Its characters have lived forever, both in CG movie adaptations and in the upcoming PS4 remake, but that's just a testament to the impact of Final Fantasy VII. Final Fantasy IV. Final Fantasy IV is a pretty big deal for the series. It introduced the active time battle system, which has been a staple for decades now, and also introduced one of the best protagonists, with Cecil, the Red Wing Captain himself. It may not have the best visuals of all the games, despite pushing the SNES pretty hard in 1991, but Final Fantasy IV has the heart. Final Fantasy X. After Final Fantasy IX went delightfully old school, fans were given another serious experience in Final Fantasy X. For being the first PS2 Final Fantasy title, Final Fantasy X didn't take a whole lot of risks. However, its big budget nature, sumptuous visuals, and amazing soundtrack proved that Square Enix could push the console for all it's worth. Now if only we could retcon Tidus out of history. Final Fantasy XII. Final Fantasy XII followed the somewhat popular MMO Final Fantasy XI. Initial doubts about the combat system may have dulled the hype somewhat, but Final Fantasy XII felt like the series had come home. Set in the world of Ivalice, Final Fantasy XII mixed everyday heroics with national politics and mythical mysteries to deliver a sophisticated plot. That the world was massive and simply teeming with things to do was a bonus. Crisis Core, Final Fantasy VII. Crisis Core is a prequel to Final Fantasy VII and focuses on Zack, Cloud's friend, and his rise through the ranks of soldier. Along with exploring the backstory behind Sephiroth and Shinra, Crisis Core displayed the expert combat design of Tetsuya Nomura, who worked on Kingdom Hearts 2 and is now working on the Final Fantasy VII remake. Crisis Core is more than just a great PSP title though. It was one of the best Final Fantasy titles in years. Dissidia, Final Fantasy. This Final Fantasy fighting game promised and delivered a compelling beat-em-up experience on the PSP with the likes of Sephiroth, Cloud Strife, Garland, Ultimecia, Kefka, and even Onion Knight. It went on to an even better sequel with Dissidia 012, and the Dissidia arcade title developed by Team Ninja. In terms of high-octane action and the sheer thrill of seeing fan-favorite Final Fantasy characters beat the tar out of each other, Dissidia is worth a look. Bravely Default. As the spiritual successor to Final Fantasy IV Warriors of Light, Bravely Default is perhaps the current best Final Fantasy series running right now. Set in Luxembourg, it concerns Tiz Arier and his friends attempting to reawaken the crystals before the world falls to darkness. It's only available on the 3DS, but Bravely Default and its sequel, Bravely Second Endlair, are still worth a look. Final Fantasy VI. Before there was Ultimecia or Sephiroth, there was Kefka in Final Fantasy VI. Releasing first in 1994 for the SNES in Japan, Final Fantasy VI didn't receive the mainstream attention it deserved in the West until it arrived for the PlayStation 1 in 1999. And even then, it had to work for it. With memorable characters, excellent item customization, summons, and attack substitutions, Final Fantasy VI felt ahead of its time. Final Fantasy Tactics. You have to give Squaresoft credit in 1997. When players expected the next big RPG announcement and it delivered Final Fantasy Tactics for the PlayStation 1, it was taking a big risk. Fortunately, the tactical RPG delivered great visuals, an even better class system, and the memorable setting of Ivalice. Final Fantasy Type O HD. Though it's a port of Final Fantasy Type O for the PSP, Type O HD features significant improvements to its visuals for the Xbox One and PS4. More importantly, after what seemed like years, console gamers had finally had access to a great Final Fantasy title. The nation of Militus attacks Vermilion Peristilium for the sake of its crystal, and it's up to Class 0, a party of 14 students armed with amazing powers, to stop them. Whether it's the sheer variety of characters or that magnificent battle system, Final Fantasy Type O HD will make you believe in the series again. Final Fantasy IX. You didn't think that we forgot this classic, did you? Final Fantasy IX was the old-school throwback that fans fed up with Eyes on Me and Squall Leonhardt turned to in 2000, and it delivered in spades. Not only did the comedy and storytelling hit all the right spots, but its battle system was a throwback to the job system of yore, while still offering compelling customization. What's your favorite Final Fantasy title of all time? Let us know in the comments, and we'll see you next time.